Hey guys, welcome to lesson number 2, leadership. We're going to be talking about becoming a leader. Now there's a lot of things that we talked about before in lesson 1 and the other past courses, but today I'm going to talk about how do we start becoming it. It's one thing to talk about it, it's one thing to set goals and ways to discipline ourselves and develop ourselves in that area, but it's another way to become something. I'm going to get into a lot of cool things. I'm going to talk about the difference between leadership and managers. So I want to talk about leaders versus managers. I also want to talk about the leadership development process. I'm going to tell you it's a process that you have to go through to develop into a leader. It's not an easy thing, and it's not going to be a 1 week in a month seminar. That's not going to get you into the leadership role or position that you need to be in. We're also going to be talking about different types of leaders, what type you may fall into, so I can basically help educate you on where you might need to be and what you might need to do. I'm going to tell you there's a lot of different things that separate us, everything from the way we look at things to how we see things to what we do. Some of us are more visual, some of us hear better, some of us like to do more. It's very interesting, but it's also going to help you when you want to become a leader. It's going to help you in the development process. And the last thing I'm going to get into are action exercises, some actions that you can take immediately. So that's why I always ask you to have a pen and a pad available, because I'm going to give you some tools that you need to implement ASAP, as soon as possible, because this is the opportunity to really be all you can be. Alright guys, so the first thing I'm going to talk about is leadership development, the development process of becoming a leader. The first thing you need to do is know yourself. If you don't know who you are, what you can bring, then I'm going to tell you right now it's going to be very difficult into becoming a leader. A leader is not just responsible for his own actions, but he's also responsible for the well-being of others. So if you can first figure out take care of yourself, take care of what you want to go after and achieve, then you can become a leader in that realm, basically carving a path for others to follow. So that's the second thing you'll be able to do. But first it starts with knowing yourself. Then I talk about knowing your environment. Where do you work? Where do you function? Where do you live? If you live in an environment that's always changing and you can't understand how the environment is set out, that's going to be a challenge, because you're not going to know how to implement your skills, your talents, and your capabilities into that environment. You want to know where you're working, who you're working with, who your audience is, who the followers might be, etc. Know that environment. And the third thing is know your enemy. Now, we don't have leaders for nothing. We have leaders because they lead great men and women to do great things. But along the journey, you're always going to find challenges. You're always going to find predicaments that are against you at times. This may be a person. This may be a situation. It may be another company. It may be another business. But you want to know your enemy. What are you up against? Because if you can figure out that, then you can know the techniques and the tactics to maneuver around it or past it, or to determinate it. The best thing you can do is be on offense. One of the soldiers, one of the great commanders I've heard speak is that, offense is the best defense. You never want to be on defense. You always want to be on the offense. Keep moving forward, keep progressing, keep producing, and keep going. That's one of the greatest things you're going to need, especially in the development process. But in order to start it, it requires a turning point. You're going to have to get sick and tired of being sick and tired of where you're at. And I hope you are, because this is what it requires in order to develop into the person, the leader you really ultimately want to be. Turning points are when you get tired of where you are. A turning point for me was when I was made fun of, teased. I felt betrayed behind people that I trusted, that I liked and looked up to. Felt ostracized. And I'm not going to get too much into it, but it's a situation where, another person's word was against my word, and they believed the other person over me, said I was lying, acting a fool, which is completely untrue. But, word of mouth, and, they picked someone else over me. I wonder why. But that made me really low. It was a very depressive state. I was very down. And I was already dealing with a lot of stuff, and you got to pile that on you, and it's like, wow. So I felt then in that moment that was a turning point. I remember that day I took a jog further than I could ever dream, and then I jumped into the water. I lived not too far from a beach, so I jumped into the water and I started swimming as far as I could. I was moving as fast as I could. I was ached out, but ever since that day, I kept pushing forward. I didn't sleep that well that night, and I kept moving. I kept moving, producing, creating, and I started a couple online businesses, a couple YouTube channels, and a whole lot of content I was creating, building a great following and starting the brand. But it started when I had a turning point, when there was something that really pushed me off that edge. And I still remember that day, and it pushed me. Ever since then, I've been moving forward because I know I need to. And I want you guys to do the same thing. The process of development is going to require you to be hungry for it. You got to be fed up with where you are, and you got to want to be where you need to be, so much so that you're not willing to sleep. You're not willing to party. You're not willing to do the things that distract you from where you need to go. The development process really does start with you. It starts with you understanding yourself, and then your environment, and then your enemy. But you got to know what your gift is and what you can bring to the table. If you guys stay tuned for the other courses, you'll know this. But if you didn't, you got to rewind it, because it all comes down to knowing what you can bring. If you can figure that out and then pursue it, you're already stepping into the realm of leadership, because you're opening up a gateway that hasn't been created. You're walking in a path that no man has walked in. All great leaders are bold enough to do something that nobody else has done, to stand out against the norm and to stand up for what they believe. You are capable of that too, because you have a belief. You have an idea, a vision, but you're just not doing it yet. You're just not taking that action step. So that's why I'm going to get into some more action exercises, some things you can actually implement and things you can do. I want you kings to stay tuned. Alright, great. So now I'm going to give you guys a couple action exercises, some things you can do right now to work on the leadership capabilities. I want you to write down on a piece of paper, where do I see myself 5 years from now when it comes to developing my leadership abilities? Do I see myself running a new company? Do I see myself opening an online store? Do I see myself creating new content? Do I see myself starting my endeavor, going after my dream? Whatever it is, just write down in 5 years' time, where do I see myself within my leadership abilities? Where is that? Where is that for you? Is that the manager of the store? Is that the CEO of the company? Is that the promotion spot? Where is it? Where do you see yourself there? And then beneath that, I want you to write down 5 things of how you think you're going to get there. What am I going to do today to move myself in that direction? Because it's one thing to set a goal, it's another thing to set an action goal, a goal that you can implement today. It's all about setting the habits to implement on a daily basis. So if you figured out where you want to go in 5 years, now I want you to figure out, how am I going to implement? How am I going to get there? So I want 5 things. The first one should be how. What's my how? Why do I want it? Why do I want to do these things? Then I want you to say, when do I want these things done? Do I want to do it every morning, every afternoon, every evening? Basically just writing down 5 things that you can do today to help you get to the 5 things you want to get 5 years from now. So one thing I like to do is waking up on time, and then I also like to do the affirmations, and I also like to do exercise. I know these things are important, but they're really allowing me to get closer to where I want to be. Since I've created exercise as part of my daily habits, I now can function better. I can think quicker on my feet, and I can see things in ways that I wasn't able to see when I was half asleep. Sometimes you're going to have to break the habit of not doing the fitness thing and start getting into it. And it's something small, but it's something that I've learned that has helped. Now for you, maybe since you want to be the manager of the company in 5 years, something you may have to do is read more. Study about the company. Study some new techniques that they could learn. Study marketing, study sales. Study how you can benefit in different ways and areas. These are going to be some tools that you should put into your plans of action. And you want to continue to work on that daily. And I also want you to figure out, when are you going to do these plans? Are you going to do them every morning, evening, etc.? The second thing I want to give you guys is the concept of understanding the difference between a leader and a manager. There's a couple of things that really differentiate leaders from managers. Managers are more focused a lot more on standards. Leaders are more focused on inspiring creativity. It's very interesting, but I'm going to give you guys a couple statements on the difference between leaders and managers. I'm going to give you an overview on how you can apply the leadership ability versus the manager ability. Because we have a lot of managers in the world, we're going to need to focus more on how to develop leaders that can actually take charge and build up more leaders. Alright guys, so cool. The difference between leaders and managers, I'm going to read from this book called On Becoming a Leader. It's a really good book. This was actually the first book I ever bought when I was about 18 years old. I never went to the bookstore before that. And this was the first book on my journey of reading. So it's an awesome book actually. And one of the couple things that it tells us on becoming a leader is the differences between management and leadership. So I'm going to give you a couple overview statements of what the book says. And it says the manager administers, the leader innovates. So there's a difference between administration and innovation. If you can become an innovator, that means you're starting to think outside of the box. An administrator wants to keep the status quo in line. Managers like to keep what's already going. A leader wants to innovate, start something new, figure out what else can this role use. They're thinking different. They're thinking more on their feet. What can they produce? What can they create? They're tapping into the creative side of the mind and not focusing so much on the regular, habitual systems that we all fall into. But if you can tap into the creativity and start to innovate and think differently, you'll see a really cool result on who wants to come on board with what you're doing. See, the second thing, the manager is a copy, the leader is an original. See, one thing you really want to happen to is developing your originality. What creates your uniqueness? You see, the manager wants to copy what already has been, what already is, but a leader wants to just be truly who they actually are. And you can do that too, but I really want to help you guys figure out who you are first before you actually become a leader. The third thing is that a manager likes to maintain, the leader likes to develop. Manager likes to maintain what's already going, the leader wants to develop a person to becoming a leader as well. The greatest leaders create leaders. That's one thing you guys are going to understand once you take the journey, is that your whole entire goal is going to be to empower others to be where you're at or further. That's the name of the game. I was listening to Dame Dash, and he's a great dude. He started Rockefeller, and he put Jay-Z on as well as Kanye West. But what he did was he laid the platform out for these gentlemen to blow up, basically to enhance their abilities. See, a lot of people at the time were trying to take advantage of talent and make money off of them, but Dame wanted to build talent up so that they could make money off of themselves and become more independent. That's what a true leader does. That's what I need you guys to be as well. We're not trying to manipulate, we're not trying to swindle, we're trying to build up and create men and women who are strong enough to innovate and create and build innovatively on their own. So another thing is, the manager relies on control, the leader inspires trust. The manager relies on control. If you don't do this, you're fired. If you don't do this, you're punished. If you don't do this, etc. The leader wants to establish a trust relationship where we can trust each other. We can shake each other's hands, look at each other in the eye, and that's enough to get something done. If you can do that, that's really a great thing to establish, but it takes time. Trust is definitely something that takes time to establish. I've learned that from doing door-to-door sales. I had to figure out ways to establish trust in about 3 to 5 seconds. And I've learned a lot of cool techniques from that, but that's a whole different story and a different topic right now. Another thing is, the manager is a classic good soldier. The leader is his or her own person. Now, for everyone in the military, you basically have to be a replica. But one thing I want you guys to do is keep your innovativeness, keep your uniqueality, maintain the individuality. Even if you're in school and you want to be like everyone else, and everyone's doing this, so you got to do it too. just maintain something unique about you, whether it's you wear your hat like this or you wear a bracelet every day, or something just unique that helps you remember that you're an individual. You don't want to get caught up in the status quo and becoming a part of the masses, because as long as you're doing that, you're really repressing your uniqueness, your individuality, the thing that brings the best out of you, and the thing that's going to bring the best out of other people once they see it come out of you. But that's going to take some time. The differences between leaders and managers is that managers focus on training, leaders focus on education. Leaders want to be educated, managers are more so trained. They're trained to do this, they're trained to do that, trained to do this. Leaders learn how to think instead of what to think. So if you can consistently learn how to think, how to see the world, how to learn on your feet versus what to learn, you'll prosper. Because you're not always going to be in the same situation. Circumstances and things will change. As long as you know that you can apply the abilities you've learned to succeed in any situation, you'll prosper. But if you only know one skill and that skill and this skill, but you don't know how to learn a new one, you're not going to prosper very well. So these are just a couple of things that you're going to be learning further on in the course. I'm also going to give you some more action exercises, some things to advance you, and things to uplift your capabilities in the mind, the heart, and the spirit. Let's get it. So alright guys, right now below, for an action exercise, I'm going to want you to write down, what are you more like, a leader or a manager? Try to figure out the differences and try to understand if you're more of a leader or more of a manager. There's going to be some cool things I'm going to get into to see what kind of a leader you are as well, because we're going to go over the different types. Now, what separates different leadership types, and then maybe you figure out what area you fall into and how you can start to be more like that. There's about 7 different types of leaders out there. These are basically proven to be the truth. So there's a transformational leadership, which is going to be it's going to be more focused on group organization. So you're more about trying to establish a group, a community, things like that. You're more easy with employees, things like this as well. Maybe you're more sociable around lower enlisted people, or people that just started working in your company, whatever. There's also the transactional leader. Now the transactional leader is more of wants a chain of command. He wants people to go through a chain of command. He probably isn't going to be talking to the guy at the bottom as often. He's probably going to be talking more to the one who's beneath him in command. Now the military is more like a transactional leadership, because technically when I'm a private, I shouldn't be talking to my squad leader, I should talk to my team leader. I talk to my team leader, then my team leader talks to the squad leader talks to platoon leader talks to the commander. So that's kind of how it is. It's kind of transactional in a way like that. But sometimes it's more effective to just be able to talk to the commander or talk to whoever. But then this compromise the chain of command. I like transactional leadership. I think it keeps things in order and keeps things aligned. But everyone thinks differently. There's also servant leadership. I think Christ was a servant leader. He served the people. He was down in the dirts. He was down in the places where we probably wouldn't go. A lot of us would think that we're too good to go to certain locations, but Christ didn't do that. He hung around people that most people didn't think much of. And servant leadership is really when you're serving, when you're providing for everyone, no matter what your rank is, no matter how much money you make, no matter what you look like, no matter where you are in the company. Servant leadership, I personally believe, is probably one of the best leadership abilities in the world. And I think you should implement a little bit of servant leadership in whatever you do. But that's my biased opinion. I'm going to teach you guys some more. There's also the autocratic leadership. Autocratic leader. Now, autocratic leader is more of it's kind of like the transactional leader, except they have more significant control over staff. They also really they don't consider worker suggestions or power. That means they're kind of like the transactional one, but they like to keep it the way it already is. It's not as innovative as some other leadership abilities will be, but it's more of keeping things in line and liking the chain of command, but they're not really going to listen too much to a worker's opinion versus more so of a guy who's higher ranked or higher up in the company's opinion. So that could be effective as well, but that's more like a government kind of a thing. Laissez-faire leadership. Laissez-faire leadership is, let them do what they want to do kind of leadership. As long as we get the work done, however you get it done is however you get it done. Laissez-faire leadership is not bad. It's just leaving doors open to a lot of distractions. Personally, that's what I believe. I believe if you're very laissez-faire, you're not going to get much of anything done because you're opening a door for everything. You want to have one focus, one aim, one team mission, and you want to figure out how you can get to that mission effectively and as fast as possible. Then they have a democratic leadership. Democratic leadership is more like suggestions. We all sit around the table, everyone throws in their opinion, and we figure out, basically do a vote, who's going to win, what should we do. We're going to vote on what's the best thing for everybody. It's more of a democracy type. Nobody is one in charge, but we're all a team, and we're all going to work together to get where we need to go through listening and voting and stuff like that. Bureaucratic leadership is it's like highly regulated and administrative environments. So it's basically where there's a lot of rules and there's a hierarchy that's very important. A lot of rules and a big hierarchy that's very important. So you'll go to a new company and this is like a really big company and they'll say, oh no, you can't talk to him because he's the boss's boss, or you're not allowed to say this to so and so. You got to go to this person first, and then I'll get to him, and then we'll email so and so. You see, it's like a chain, and it's the hierarchy is there and it's obvious. Sometimes this is good, sometimes it's bad. I think Mr. Trump runs his place more like a bureaucratic leadership. How he probably would run his companies more of like, I'm the boss, you're down here, don't talk to me, etc. But I don't know, I can't judge. I never worked for him, never will. Never will be in his company, never plan to, unless I'm going to build something that will actually compete against it. Then I'll see what he's doing, because then that will be my enemy. Because you got to know yourself, your product, your service, know the environment where you're going to market, etc., and then know your enemy. What's your competition, etc. Things like this. Charismatic leadership. I think charismatic leadership is important. You got to be charismatic. Got to be comfortable with the tongue. Got to be easy to speak to, open, etc. Bridge the gap between workers and higher ups. Basically, you want to be personal, likable, things like this. I think it goes far. I almost think I'm more of a charismatic leader as well, because I wouldn't push anyone aside if they didn't necessarily agree or thought differently and stuff like that. You want to be open to everyone. And we also got situational leadership. Situational leadership is a theory that the best leaders utilize a range of different styles depending on the environment. I think that's awesome. I think everyone needs a little bit of situational leadership. That means, look, if the market's going down 100, if it's going down like it once did, are you going to change your leadership style to adapt to the environment, or are you going to be arrogant and keep the same thing you've been doing that obviously just didn't work? You're going to have to situate yourself around your environment. Every leader needs this, I believe, because if you're going to stick with one way and that one way wasn't working, you got to figure out what will work. It's like a product. If the product's not selling, don't sell it or change something. You have to know when to let go. And that same thing goes with leadership as well. You got to know when to let go of an ability or skill or style that's just not working. I can't run a company or a business the way somebody would have ran it 20, 30, 50 years ago. Things have changed. The society has changed. People have changed. The mindsets have changed. I think people like servant leadership and charismatic leadership a little bit better these days. I think people want to feel like their opinions matter more so at every level. So I think certain hierarchy leaderships just don't work as well today as they once did. I think everyone has an opinion and everyone wants to be heard. So I think a democracy leadership might actually be a little bit better as well as a laissez-faire leadership, surprisingly. I don't think it's the most effective way, but I think it's also a way that people would feel more likely to obey or to confine underneath a laissez-faire leadership. Especially in today's society, we have a lot of people very sensitive. We don't want to be told what to do, etc. So we'll prefer that, but it might not be the best thing. So these are just a couple leadership styles. I put my opinion in there for a lot of them. You guys can rewind the video. I'll also post around here somewhere the different styles so you guys can see them and write them down in your notebooks. And then I want you to go ahead and look those things up, study them a little bit more. I probably will try to give you some more definitions. If you have any questions on those leadership styles, go ahead and email me. I'll send you an email a little bit more about each style, and so you guys can compare and contrast to figure out which one you want to be like, which one you're already more like, etc. Alright guys, so right now I want to talk about the core root of being a leader. Now the core root of becoming a leader starts with actually being a leader, or just more so being in general. The core root of becoming is being. So you first have to be, and then you can do. But if you're not really that person within, you can't do it. You can't be it because it's just not who you are. But if you're not really that person within, you can't do it. You can't be it because it's just not who you are. Okay, so in order to be, you have to first understand. Understand what your qualities are. Understand the leadership things that are already in you by first mastering them. Mastering the skill sets you're good at. Mastering the talents that you already have. It takes time to master anything, but the first thing you're going to need to do is master it. Study, learn, educate, take time to understand before you teach. You see, for me, I like to study. I have about 70 different books. I brought about 60 books with me just to prepare for this. So I have highlighted notes. I have stacks of paper about this high of just notes that I wanted to get to you. I only have an hour with you, so I try to get as much as possible. But there's so much information and so many things that you could learn when it comes to really developing yourself and then applying what you know. But the first thing is to develop yourself. This isn't coming out overnight. This is going to take a couple years, maybe 4 years, 5 years. But as long as you're consistently developing, consistently growing, you're going to be okay. Leaders develop the skill set of consistently learning. They never think they've learned enough. The greatest teachers, the greatest innovators are still learning today. They read books daily. They understand that the smartest thing they can do is understand that they don't know much of anything. And that's the best thing you can do as well. You never want to think that you know everything, because then you won't learn anything. It's a funny concept, but it's the truth. In order to become a leader, you also want to be able to be comfortable in taking chances, walking into an unknown situation, because guess what? You're going to be the first one in it. Most of the time, not everyone wants to be a leader because they're walking into the unknown first. They're the ones that are going to get hurt, the ones that are going to get dirty, the ones that are going to get scratched on. One of the coolest things I loved about Napoleon is that he was a general that fought with the lower enlisted soldiers. Today's military, the generals don't really fight alongside the lower enlisted. The generals are sitting in different rooms and they're giving out commands, and the lower enlisted are carrying those orders out. But they're the ones taking the pain. They're the ones getting killed. They're the ones getting scratched and beat. Napoleon went out with them. He's the highest general there, running alongside the lower enlisted. What this did was this built the morale of his army. This built the morale of all the soldiers. They were willing to die for him just because of that, at any moment's notice. A lot of the complaints lower enlisted soldiers have among all militaries is that the higher-ups just don't really care. The higher-ups just don't understand what we have to go through. The higher-ups just don't want to understand. This is something I learned in the military when, lower enlisted just don't think officers know what it's like. And to be honest, a lot of them don't. But some do. And the good ones know how to utilize that to their strengths. If you're going to be a leader, you need to get in the mud with the soldiers. Never ordain something you wouldn't do yourself. That's one of the things we've learned in the military, is that as a sergeant, you don't tell a lower enlisted to do something that you wouldn't do. You have to be willing to do it too. And if you can do that, humble yourself and go in with the lower enlisted or with the people you are leading, you'll actually build a deeper trust, a deeper mutual respect, and you guys will be able to get a lot more done. But like I said, it's all going to start with the man in the mirror and mastering your skills, mastering your craft, so then you can teach it, educate it, and really be it. But you also want to get comfortable in the unknown. That's why I read this book. It's really cool. It talks about walking into the chaos, walking into the atmosphere that sounds crazy. Most people wouldn't do it. Say you're in debt and you're losing a lot of money and you're running, your business is not doing well, it's failing. Everyone that are underneath you think that you're just gonna sell the company or just get out of there as quick as possible. They don't know if they're gonna get paid, etc. But you do something completely different. You open up another one with no money, with barely any sort of recognition. You just say, look, this one's failing, but I'm not giving up. I'm just going to do something else or do this or do that. You just do something that doesn't make sense, that's wild. That's what leaders do. They take a lot of chances. It doesn't always make sense, doesn't always seem logical, but they're not afraid to do it. And when they do those things, they actually open up an idea for the ones that are underneath them. They begin to think that a lot of things are possible. Opens up their visions, open up their capabilities. You're going to have to get comfortable with going into unknown situations confidently. People don't want to follow someone that doesn't even look confident, sound confident, act confident. Even if you're not confident, you want to pretend like you are when you're walking into that situation. Because any sort of fear is going to be sniffed out and people are going to doubt you. You can't have a sense of fear or a sense of doubt, because if it's in there, they're not going to follow you. And what you need people who are strong enough to move behind you, move with you. But first you have to carve that path. You have to open that gateway. You have to be the one to walk in first. Never tell somebody to do something you wouldn't do. That's a coward. That's not a leader. That's what cowards do. Leaders walk in first. They carve the path. Whether it means risking their life, they put their life on the line for the ones that follow beneath them or behind them, that depend upon them. That's what a leader really does. That's who a leader really is. And I want to figure out what kind of leader you are. What are you going to be when you take action, start to do, and start to walk into the unknown? Are you going to carry yourself the right way? Or are you going to cower aside and back out? I need you guys to walk in powerfully, strong, with strength, knowing who you are, what you can do. Because there's people looking up to you for something. It may not be what you think they're looking up to you for, but it's something. So do it, and do it strong. Don't back down. Keep moving and push forward through the dust, through the dirt, and through the rain, because you'll make it to the other side. I guarantee you. Thank you guys for staying tuned for leadership lesson number 2 on becoming a leader. I'm also going to give you guys, again, emails and more techniques that you can utilize. This is all beneficial. This isn't, you have to pay for this at all. This is all part of the package. You're getting more emails, and you guys can have conversations. We can talk about this in the forum, as well as we can talk about this personally. Give me a call. We can really discuss your leadership type and how you're going to apply it. So I also want to help you with that as well. But if you guys figured out exactly what type of leader you were, I want you to figure out how you can apply that into your life, right? What are you going to do today to move in that direction? You're going to get up early? I always say that, but really, are you going to do it? Or are you just saying you're going to do it? You need to figure out what you're going to do now. Can't wait tomorrow, because there is no tomorrow. We can't depend on that. We got to work with today. And then we got to use today to our advantage for tomorrow. So let's move on it. Let's go. So before I leave you guys, I want to give you a couple stories of successful leaders in the past. Leaders like Martin Luther King and Gandhi. For instance, these guys were more servant leadership. They more cared about the people, and they were focusing more on serving and providing and giving than they were on a hierarchy and level like this. Martin Luther King was more of a servant leader because he was able to walk with instead of standing up, but to be from a distance. When they did protests and marches, he was going to prison with everyone else. He was getting hurt just like everyone else. When Gandhi had his revolution, he was with the people just as much as Martin Luther King was. And one of the things Martin Luther King was able to do was he was able to study Gandhi before he started his leadership position and starting the civil rights movement. he first studied other leaders who were doing similar things in different countries. So what he did was he learned underneath people like that and studied their tactics, their styles, and stuff as well. What you're going to need to do is study somebody who has the leadership style you want. Now, there's different leaders. Caesar is a completely different leader from Martin Luther King. There's something that's completely different because he's more focused on efficiency. He was definitely a hierarchy kind of a guy, and he wanted to make sure he was getting the job done as quickly and effectively as possible. He would do things like his troops would die underneath him, but they would die underneath him to get the mission done. You see, if it was a laissez-faire leadership, I don't think the people would have gotten the mission complete because they probably wouldn't have been able to die beneath the leader. Caesar had things set up where one day, once they were trapping an enemy, a barbaric group of an enemy, I forgot the nation, but it was a barbarian group that they wanted to destroy. And so they knew they couldn't siege the village, so what they did was they built a fortress around the village, which basically destroyed them slowly. But the Romans didn't have enough food, and neither did they. So they were in contest to see who would die out sooner. It's very, very strategic, and it takes a lot of patience as well as it takes a commitment and a trust from your soldiers, from your people. That's what I'm saying. If it was a servant leader, he wouldn't be able to get that done as effectively as a bureaucratic leader or a transactional leader. They're more able to get these things done because they've established a hierarchy which people respect. So you got to figure out which one works best for you, where you're most effective, and things like this. At the end of that, for going back to Caesar, in the Roman military, they actually won what they were trying to do after thousands of troops died. It was it was the survival of the fittest, to see who would last the longest. And at the ending, he won. But it was a very long time and it was very strategic. But you also want to make sure you're with the right people who are willing to last with you, who are willing to put forth. When things don't look good, are they still going to stick around? Because a lot of people are going to leave when it doesn't look beneficial to them. You have to find people that live the same mission, that breathe the same belief, that want to go the same places you want to go, and who are willing to stick around when it doesn't look like you're prospering. There's a lot of people that will come on board with you and just leave you when they don't see the benefit for them. But that's not someone you want. You see, what Caesar did was he bred more leaders. He set the foundation for people to become leaders of their own. However, not everyone will take advantage of that foundation. A lot of people you will give the opportunity to become leaders, to rise up as Caesar did, but they may take it the wrong way. They may push it aside. They might drink on their position. They might throw it away. See, Caesar didn't grow up in the military. It wasn't his chain of command to become the leader of Rome. He was just a normal civilian boy, and he seized an opportunity to advance himself up. He seized an opportunity to be in the military and to advance in the ranks, as well as then he seized an opportunity to become the leader of Rome. So you have to have a little bit of ambition in there, but how far are you willing to go with that? You see, Caesar was willing to do a lot to get to where he was. Some people aren't willing to die for it. Some people aren't willing to kill for it. He was willing to do those things. It depends what level you are and how far you really want to go. But then again, I say there's a difference because Martin Luther King had a strength about him where he was willing to die for his belief. But I don't think he was going to kill for it. Caesar was willing to die and kill for what he believed. This is the difference. What kind of a leader are you? Are you willing to die? Are you willing to kill? Are you willing to go to those extremes to get to where you need to be? Because it's a rough atmosphere where, either you're eating or you're getting ate kind of a world. And a lot of the times, if you're not the one on the offense, you're already in the wrong. There's a saying that says, If you don't know who the dumbest person in the room is, it's probably you. So you got to look at those situations when you're going to your job, when you're starting a business. If you can't figure out who the dummy is, then it might be you. And it's not to be disrespectful, it's just to say if you're not on top of your game, you need to watch yourself, because somebody else will take that position and be on top of you. So you always want to keep moving forward, you always want to keep educating and advancing, and you want to be open to these realities. You don't want to walk out and think that this is a laissez-faire kind of a world. Even though there is a laissez-faire leadership, not everyone plays by that. There are companies that actually have such a bond in the community that members get a tattoo of the company logo glued into their hand. This is going on today. There's companies like that today that have that sort of a bond, where they're raising up leaders who are willing to do whatever it takes to succeed. And if you're not at that level, you may actually get ate instead of eat. So you want to figure out where you can apply your best beliefs and your best habits. I'm learning a lot from this book called War by Robert Greene. It says if you don't burn your bridges, you're not ready for it. You got to burn the bridges. A lot of great leaders, generals, they had to figure out how they could get their troops motivated. Motivation was the hardest thing to do. Sometimes it's very hard to motivate employees and motivate people that you work with and things like this. But what they had to do was one of these leaders had to figure out how to motivate the troops. And this was probably in the 14th, 15th century, but it was in Asia, and it was these troops. I think they were going to, not to battle, but they were going on a op or a mission or something like this. But the person leading them wanted rulership. He wanted rulership of the Aztec Empire. This was back in the day, a long time ago, and this guy wanted to become the king of the Aztec Empire. And they were like, I don't know about all that. They were very opposed to it. His troops didn't want to do all that. They were lazy. They were demotivated. All they wanted to do was get the mission complete so they could go home to their family. But what this leader did was he did something very different. Once they arrived to the position, what he did was he literally physically burned the boats back home. So all the troops there had no escape. They had to get this mission complete. They had to take over the empire in order to get back home. And because he gave them that sort of motivation, they got it done. But sometimes you're going to have to do things like burn the bridges, take away some of the comfort things in order to get some of the things you need done. These leaders knew that. They knew who they worked with. They knew their troops. They knew the employees. And they knew they needed motivation. You have to be motivated enough to motivate others and to do what it takes to get the mission complete. Whether that's the business, whether that's the leading the forces, whatever it is a whole bunch of leadership types that you're going to look into. But ultimately, I need you to find one and glue yourself into it and become it, live it, breathe it, act it, do it, and don't hold back. Burn all bridges behind and step into the unknown with confidence, because you can do it. A lot of people can't, but you can. Cool. So guys, one of the things you're going to have to get great at doing is being able to sell a dream, sell an idea, sell a belief, sell something that can be possible. A lot of great leaders know how to do this. It's very common within the political scene. You'll have great leaders like Barack, former presidents that had logos and chants and slogans like "Yes, we can do it." Even Trump had a slogan, "Make America Great Again." I don't know about all that, but that was his slogan, and it appealed to a lot of Americans, surprisingly. But this is what you're gonna have to do. You have to sell a dream, and you're gonna have to sell it to the masses. They're gonna have to understand you, to believe in it, to the extent that they're willing to follow you in it. That's why vision is so important. You want to have clarity of vision. It even says it in the Bible, a man with no vision will perish. But I personally believe a company with no vision will perish. A person or a relationship with no vision will perish. A lot of things do when there's no vision. You got to have the mind, the belief to see it, and then to do it. But not just for yourself, for others. You want to empower others to see the same thing you see, to vision the same goals that you vision, so that they can walk with you to achieve it. But they can't walk with a blind man, because a blind man will lead them to the dirt. You'll lead them to prosperity. You'll lead them to better health. What is the promise? What is the benefit? What will others obtain from following you to the objective, to the location? If they don't know what they're going to get from it, why would they follow you? And don't just expect people to follow you blindly. Give promise, a return, an achievement, a goal. What is the end objective? What will they obtain from this? What will they get from this? The slogan, "Yes, we can," showed us that we can do anything. If we can get this brother in the office, then anything's possible. That was the mentality, right? So we realized what was possible. We realized what could be done. I want you guys to figure out, what are you going to be teaching? What are you going to be putting out there? What logo, what slogan, what vision, what dream are you going to be selling? But it starts with yours, and you got to express that. You got to give that. You got to teach it. You got to have clarity with it to empower others to believe in it as well. You're capable. Let's get it. You're also going to want to challenge things. When you're a leader, you're going to have to challenge the status quo, the norm. You want to push the label, push the button. Don't get comfortable with anything. Even your employees or the people working with you or beneath you or whatever are following you, you want to challenge them. Challenge their beliefs, challenge their mentalities, challenge what they know, what they can grow into. Consistently grow by challenging. You see, set the bar high and then set it higher. Once you achieve the goal, set a higher goal. Once you achieve that goal, set a higher goal. You got to keep pushing it, keep growing, keep moving forward. Because if you settle for anything or where you are, it's going to stay there. You need to push that. Push the button, push the boundaries so you can break them. I used to have a show called Breaking Boundaries. So I would talk about breaking those boundaries. You have a boundary, you break it, and you push it, and you go to another one. You can do this. When you have the vision and the dream, it'll open up the door to move toward it, no matter what obstacle, no matter what challenge. And then you'll say, you can overcome, you will overcome, and you'll represent an overcoming mentality. You're also going to want to challenge things. When you're a leader, you're going to have to challenge the status quo, the norm. You want to push the label, push the button. Don't get comfortable with anything. Even your employees or the people working with you or beneath you or whatever are following you, you want to challenge them. Challenge their beliefs, challenge their mentalities, challenge what they know, what they can grow into. Consistently grow by challenging. You see, set the bar high and then set it higher. Once you achieve the goal, set a higher goal. Once you achieve that goal, set a higher goal. You got to keep pushing it, keep growing, keep moving forward. Because if you settle for anything or where you are, it's going to stay there. You need to push that. Push the button, push the boundaries so you can break them. I used to have a show called Breaking Boundaries. So I would talk about breaking those boundaries. You have a boundary, you break it, and you push it, and you go to another one. You can do this. When you have the vision and the dream, it'll open up the door to move toward it, no matter what obstacle, no matter what challenge. And then you'll say, you can overcome, you will overcome, and you'll represent an overcoming mentality.